What's up, guys? My name is Anthony. I am here from on the Stat Check Network. You know us pretty well, at least me, and today Innes is a guest because this is a brand new show. Welcome to Enter the Matrix, where it'll be me and my co-host. I had it right the first time. Typhus
Uh,
will be
that
talking to
one's
some of
correct.
the. Yeah, I had it. We got it that way. um, Me and my co-host Typhus will be breaking down or talking to a lot of the WTC captains and going over the WTC last year for 2022. We'll go through, the ups, the downs, how they felt, what they felt going in, what they felt during the event, things that happened throughout. This will be released as bonus content for the Stat Check Patreon members a little bit earlier. If you are watching it that way, sweet. If not, you can see this 2 weeks sooner by jumping on our Patreon, which is at StatCheck or patreon.com/StatCheck. I think that's right. And if not,
Or
it'll
in
be
the
linked in the
links
description.
below.
Yeah, in the links below will be the main thing. So yeah, welcome to the brand new thing. Very excited to be doing this. Typhus, you want to introduce yourself a little bit so that people will know who you are and why they should care about you?
Uh, Should they though?
They should. They really should. It's really
Okay,
important that
okay. Well, that's reassuring.
they
But
debatably they should care
yeah,
more about what you have to say than what I have to say.
uh, yeah. So I've been playing at WTC ETC for 10 years now, so it's been a while.
Dude, what's your name?
Oh, you want my full name?
Yeah,
Like
just
Yeah.
go
Piotr
start with do the
Zawiła-Niedźwiecki?
easy intro, man. You wanna
No, no, come on, come on. Like, if I wrote down my full name here, you would just struggle. Like, literally, that's a thing that I do when I meet new people, and it was a case at WTC as well. When I was playing against certain players, I would just give them my ID and tell them to pronounce my surname, and if they managed, I would buy them a beer. So thankfully, I
so
bought
it's
zero
so it's
beers.
it's
Yep.
typhus or
Yeah.
typhus.
So I think typhus is the easier way. Although I regret being 13-year-old fuck who decided that choosing a character from Chaos Space Marine book as my nickname would be fitting. But you cannot undo what has been done, so
It's
I
too late
gotta
now.
leave my bad decisions. But yeah, I've been playing at TTC WTC 10 years. Not always as a player. Sometimes I was a referee. Once I was in the mercenary team, and I was at WTC ETC podium 6 times.
That's
Uh,
wild.
Total in my life. And what else? I'm a referee for most of the UK events, so I have plenty of time to shit talk with Ines. Uh, so and actually talk how money is dog shit at the game and stuff like that. It's it's always enjoyable. So
Perfect.
yeah, something else to add. I'm also Polish, so I'm cheap labor. So
It's true.
He's literally doing this for free.
Yeah.
yeah, it's a fair price after all.
Yeah. You get what you pay for, they say. And then for this one, we paid quite a bit and we get more than we bargained for.
Sure. Uh, and maybe instead of doing like only introduction, I think me and Anthony we had a conversation about it that it would be quite cool to actually get more coverage from like other captains
Yep.
from WTC because you mainly see like 2-3 countries online. Like nowadays you obviously see Aussies, you see some of Team America, but to be honest, I don't think neither Team America or Team UK want to actually talk about this year after how disgraceful it was for them. So do you actually listen to maybe us or Aussies?
Yep.
And I think it's kind of a shame because every country has different approach to it. And I actually enjoyed talking about it at WTC, and we spoke about it. You, Anthony, and me, we spoke about
Yep.
it, and we actually figured like our approaches are so different that it's actually cool to hear out how people see this as an event and how they approach the preparations because we are quite serious in Poland about it, and we like our whole year revolves around it. And I was actually curious how you guys and other teams would do it.
Yeah. So the idea here is that we'll be breaking through, kind of going over like all the individual details of like what a team does going into an event from the perspective of usually a captain. We'll most likely have a captain on from a given country. If we can't get the captain, we'll talk to someone else that helped a whole bunch with the prep. Because like Typhus was saying, like when we talked about like the different prep that we went through for the event, it was like night and day. Obviously, the US team is definitely known for not being the most teams focused of the nations that attend.
But at least you are humble.
Yeah, at least we were really humble going in. That's right. Whereas like obviously he's the Polish captain and they do, like you said, their whole year's circuit is focused on it. So we're gonna talk to a bunch of teams, find out a bunch of things, and today we start with one of my co-hosts on the main show, Ennis. Ennis, you
Hi.
wanna yeah, you guys know him. You may or may not love him. You probably like him a lot. I don't know if he's ready to be told he's loved.
Definitely not.
Yeah, it makes him uncomfortable, that's for sure. So walk us through it, bro. How did you feel now? Let's start with the easy thing, right? How do you feel about how the year went in the WTC this year now?
It sure was a good learning year, which is what we knew it was going to be
Okay.
coming in, which is such a cop-out statement, and it really is. We came into this knowing we're not going to do great, and we didn't do great, but we also did worse than we thought we were going to when we weren't planning on doing well. So there's layers to we came here to try and like get some experience. Coming into this year, our goal was we wanted to go 4-3. We figured that was a fairly good chance to go for a positive record. We're a team that's done very well in the past. We've had a literal third place. We've also had some really bad years. The year immediately after our third place, I think we came 26th. So we definitely have our highs and lows. Yeah, no, I know, right?
It's a rough
We
year.
definitely had our highs and lows as a country. But we were trying to come in. We've had a bit of a rebuild. COVID took the wind out of our sails a lot, and we lost a lot of our veteran players, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. You get rid of a lot of people who were just doing WTC because they do WTC every year, and you get a lot of people in who are new and hungry for it. So we came in with the expectation that we would, try and go positive. The goal was, 4-3, 3-3 and 1 was like, we thought that was fairly reasonable. We ended up going 2 wins, 2 draws, and 3 losses. I'm not unhappy with any of the teams we lost to. I'm a little unhappy with the teams we drew to. That's just kind of the nature of those things. And looking back on it, we learned a bunch of stuff, and I'll run through some of the cool things that ended up happening after the fact a little bit later when it comes up naturally. But there's definitely been a lot of players that have come out of it who I'm looking at them and I'm like, yeah, next year you guys are going to do fucking great. And then there's been a lot of other bits where I'm like, yeah, okay, this did not work, and maybe I should have been a little more hands-on with that, been a little less laissez-faire. I tried to be a little easygoing this year because there was a big kind of sense of I can't push these guys that hard this year because they don't know why I'm pushing them, and they're just resenting it. I don't know if that's what they've experienced, but that was kind of how it felt from my side. Was if I keep pushing these guys, they're going to just break, and they're either going to not go or they're just going to give up and tell me to fuck off, which is not great. I don't think that was actually would have happened from any of them, but there was definitely an aspect of, are you guys really trying as hard as you could have been? Are you guys getting as much practice as you should have? And coming out of it this year, I think the people who did do that and the people who didn't do that, the people who did try their asses off, looked at each other and went, "Oh, we're not playing for the same Scotland right now." So that's been kind of the big thing. And then I've been working with my vice captain, Chris, who is a different Chris than my vice captain last year, to work on how we're going to do the process for this year, which is hopefully we're going to make some changes that will make this a thing of the past and we'll go back to getting podiums. Because I've tasted it once, I can't. I need it again. I got to get that hit, man.
But now you do not have Blackie, so we will not see Scottish bare ass on the podium. So
I can't promise that you won't.
Okay, well,
if Ennis makes the podium, you might get some.
please no, please no.
As I blind everyone in the room with the pale white glow of the moon.
But
yeah, that's true.
as you were saying that you actually had like a system previously, I guess, like with choosing your players, and now you want to approach it differently Could you like expand on that?
So not so much the system we have for picking players. I still like the system we have for picking players, which I'll run through, I suppose. We pick our team based on we run an independent ranking system. So outside of like the ITC, UKTC, which is tailored for Value Me Scottish events, because we want to have our community be incentivized, not just players who can go down to the big English events or travel across to America or whatever. So we have our own ITC for our own version of the ITC rankings, which the top 3 players from that rankings all qualify for the team. So if you are one of the best 3 players in Scotland, then that's the way you get on the team. We've never had any real issues with that. There's definitely, because we're such a small community, the same players tend to win a lot of things. So it's never been an issue with that. I know you could definitely see a little bit of that if you had a big community where, there's an Eldar, 3 players play Eldar and they all play the same thing and they all win 3 tournaments and they all qualify, and then you have problems with that. That's never come up. It's kind of academic. If you're a good enough player to win over the course of a year, you're probably good enough to change armies if it really comes to that. So that's fine. Those 3 players then pick 2 players from the top 10 of our rankings. Those become the 5. Those 5 pick 2 more from the top 20, I think it is. And then those 7 then pick 1 more. And then if the captain's not chosen at that point, the captain becomes the non-playing coach if they want it. And then the vice captain the same. And then that's it. That's how we pick the team. As captain, if I don't qualify for the team at any point in that process, I don't get a say on who the team is. I work with what I'm given. It's a system that's been in place for before I started, and that's not part of what we're looking at changing. I really like the system. I think it gives newer players who've not kind of hit that click of knowing who the WTC guys are in Scotland the opportunity to go and do really well at a bunch of events and say, look, you guys should be paying attention to me. But it also maintains that selection process where we can look at it and we can go, okay, yeah, we're not going to pick person number 4 because he does just play the same armies as 1, 2, and 3 that we've already got. We'll go for 5 and 6, or we'll go for 6 and 3, or whatever. However that process works out. But you end up with guys who are playing a bunch at tournaments, picking the team, which is kind of what you want. You want the guys that are doing well and can do the eye test. You can look at a player and be like, yeah, you're not winning everything, but you're really good at your role, and we can use that. So that was how a couple of players this year, like Matty, got picked, because he was really, really good at getting very good points in matchups that he probably shouldn't get good points in. But he wasn't winning a lot. But we grabbed him anyway, and he's done really well this year in terms of developing and growing. And that was what we were set out for this year. So that part I don't want to touch. The part I want to deal with is after we've picked the team, how we get practice, and we didn't do any of the TTS scrims this year, which were a big thing for a lot of countries that did really well. We did none of that because a bunch of my players just didn't play TTS. And I'll include myself in that. I was not a big TTS person. So those are the kind of the processes that we need to be working on, not the selection. The selection I'm happy with.
Okay, and then following up on that, you said as a captain, so when do you choose actually the team? Like what is your deadline? Because we have kind of similar way of doing this in Poland, because during COVID, like the selection team would choose all 8 players, but if we have a proper tournament year, we have our version of ITC rankings, which is better because it doesn't matter. It doesn't count attendance. It's just flat out points for different tiers of events, which I think is a better way to do it. But what I'm trying to say in all of this is that we choose those. We have, for example, top 3 players, but they are included in the team automatically. But then we choose another 5. And those 5 can be chosen as late as in like May, June. And I'm wondering how it works for you, because obviously for us, we can afford booking flight like 1 week before, 1-2 months before, because those aren't extremely expensive. For example, for us, I guess in US is completely different thing, but I know you're not from US, by the way. But I'm wondering, when do you actually choose like the whole 8
So
men?
our usual process. So we used to pick our team in January. There used to be 2 big events, one in Scotland and one in the north of England, and the winner of those 2 events, the top performing Scottish player, was the 2 players on the team, and then they picked from there with the captain. And we changed that system because it was really dumb for a lot of reasons. Winning an event does not necessarily mean you're good enough or you're qualified to be picking the team. So we went from that, which picked in January, and then we moved our selection process forward to October because we wanted more time with the team selected to not so much like pick lists and factions, because that, as everybody knows, that changes on a dime. But we like to have the team solidified pretty far in advance, with like 1 or 2 backups in the case of drops. For that reason, because we run a separate event, or we're part of a separate event series called Home Nations, Six Nations, whatever it's being called this year, which is an event that's run by one of a rotating series of captains from the British countries, and then the Republic of Ireland and Belgium. The event moves between the 6 countries, host each year. I hosted in Scotland last year, so we have that, which is usually April, May time, and we want to be a cohesive unit by the time that comes around, because that's really good practice. Because we have our 8 playing team, we play 5 other playing teams, and we've been inviting other teams additionally. So we had Denmark and Sweden over this year for practice for that. So we want to be ready for that, so that we're then ready for WTC. So we tend to pick really early. We don't lock anything down for a long time after that. I wouldn't say we lock factions. We lock factions for that like in March. So we've just got 5 months of, you've got people you practice with now, and you're in that team mindset. I don't know how much it would be a case of, like, we could probably do, we pick 16 players and we whittle them down like what Canada does. But having that set of, you guys are 8, if you guys want to, you'll be the 8 playing in August, gets people's mindset in the right place for us, we found, because it can be pretty loose otherwise when you're just like, yeah, you guys are still trying it for Team Scotland. You've been trying it until May. We don't have that sort of stringent context that you guys have in Poland, where everything is centered around it. It's still a lot of singles, and having that focus where you say, no, you're now a WTC player. Your focus is on this. Really, I've found it helps. It helps a lot more than when we pick the team 4 months later. With saying, you've got a bunch of events in November, and like October, November, December tend to be pretty busy months, or October and November at least, for events. And saying, you're going to start playing your team list now, gets people in that mindset for us, which I really liked personally.
So you haven't encountered like loss of motivation between players, or players dropping suddenly because of the addition changes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That definitely happens. We've had players drop, like, over the years. I've been part of Team Scotland since 2016. We've had at least one drop a year every year. It's just kind of something that happens. Players find out they're moving country. We had a player who ended up having to be on a 6-month placement in Africa during WTC this year and couldn't make it. Yeah, he works in oil and gas, so he just couldn't do it. Another player had a medical emergency, so we pulled in a replacement, and then we pulled another replacement. Sometimes those replacements go great. We ended up pulling in Brian, who was one of our better performing players this year, off of the back of somebody else dropping, because he wasn't somebody that was on our radar in October. He wasn't somebody that was really on our radar until probably
I think, what was it,
actually.
Leicester, Coventry?
Yeah, Leicester that he won, which was about a month after selection for us, which is definitely a downside. So if somebody comes out the woodwork and wins a super major, I'm not expecting that to happen many more times, for somebody to win their first event and have it be a 200-player super major. But maybe it does.
Yeah. I was asking because we had situations where actually like new player would surface around April, May, and it would turn out that in 2 months time we could actually get him on like national team level to be like playing with me, Vladi, etc. On like similar skill level. So that, for me, I was wondering, like, how much do you actually care about like team cohesion over like the best players in that sense? Because it can be more, putting more emphasis on actually the team cohesion, as you are saying, right?
So the year we did really well, we were a solid unit. That we had, I think that was the only year we didn't have drops that I've played, and we had the same team through from day one. Like, we picked them in October, and then we all played, or I think it was November at the time, whatever. And we played as a team through Home Nations and then WTC. We had our captain actually stepped down that year. He went from playing to non-playing just before Home Nations, and then we brought in our coach to play, and that was the best year we've ever had, because we all knew exactly how each other played. The pairings process was absolutely piss easy. We could all rely on each other to do things. And then in other years, we've had separate issues where you pick the team because it's the best players, and the best players don't get on, and you have arguments in the hotel room afterwards. And I know that those are both extreme examples of it, but that's what happened the year we went from 3rd to 26th. Was we had that team that gelled, and then 7 of the 8 players, and none of us gelled, and the team fell apart. We've never had this case where somebody comes out the woodwork in April and we can suddenly make them amazing. Me is probably the last time that happened, where like I kind of started winning a bunch of stuff a couple months before selection, but wasn't really available. It was like 2016. I was first year university. I couldn't have afforded to do it anyway. That was probably the last time that we really had that show up. And then Brian this year. So yeah, it's definitely something that could happen, and I think we would approach that on a case by case. But it's a big commitment traveling abroad for us, especially if you're going to Eastern Europe. You're looking at flights, hotels. Belgium is probably a bit easier because it's cheaper last minute. But yeah, getting everything in place is not cheap for us. So yeah, there's pros and cons
I
to it.
feel you.
I've never seen it happen. Yeah, no, I kind of when you guys go from traveling to Serbia to traveling to Belgium, it must be a big difference.
Yeah, at least for the guys who are actually still uni students, we
Right.
are actually like offering them 0 interest rate loans, so they could afford to go. So
Right.
it can be fun.
Yeah, the first year I coached, my team paid for my flights. It's just like they all chipped in like 30 quid to pay for my flight over to Spain. Yeah, that part of the community thing is also the we've all been playing together for 6 months. We all want to help each other and see us get there. That helps out. Yeah, I could definitely see a situation where we move to a later selection. I was considering moving it back to January this year, and I might do that next year if I'm still captaining because October does feel pretty early. Now
Some
with more
people are
context,
still like, I don't know how about you guys, but I felt so burned out after WTC that actually October seems really early for me. Like,
yeah, no, it's definitely been weird coming straight out of WTC into planning for selection for the next one.
yeah,
Um, but there's also an aspect of I've come into it with like everything is ready. I know exactly what went wrong, and I can go straight into it. So there's how much I value my mental sanity versus how much I value coming into it with a fresh understanding. And I'm choosing not to value my sanity because I play 40k.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's weird for the US team because like 3 or 4 of us are like hungry as fuck and talk every day about it. And then there's like, some loose unknown right now. So we're trying to like figure that out so we can like actually properly plan. Because for those of us who were like devastated by our result, we're like real eager to get back after it and not let that happen again. But then, like there's some people that are, probably not playing the team again next year, or just were like, all right, that was cool, but not for me again. So we'll see. We'll see how it all pans out. Big watch this space for the US boys.
I can't see.
and
I can't wait to see what you guys do. You guys, we had this really good thing for a few years where wherever the US was, the Scotland was probably like 2 places behind them every year, but we'd never played. And then the year you guys won, we came or yeah, the year you guys won, we came third. So it was like, yeah, hell yeah. And then you guys like came fifth the next year. We came 26th. It was like, we fucked
Oh,
that one, didn't we, boys?
oops.
It's like we were real close. We were like almost as good as them most years. No, you're not. Fucking scrubs.
Down the ladder.
Yeah,
so,
it's
so, so
really
so
hard to climb back up that ladder once you're off it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
so I will follow up on that topic of like choosing the team using the rankings, because we actually had so much thoughts about it in our community. Uh, do you feel like in any way it impacts those people who are chosen in October, what they play and how they perform in your own events, and how this would impact them being in the team next year by your ranking? So what I'm trying to say is that, for example, you have someone who, let's say this year, was chosen because he was in top 20, but he was barely in top 20, but he was good. And then he realized that he can only choose to rather go to, for example, Six Nations, few of your team events, instead of grinding your rankings again. And then you realize that he might not get into the team because he wouldn't be in the rankings, but like skill wise and the games he played on like WTC home nations, he wouldn't be like available by your rule set.
Yeah, no, that's
So
fair.
have you encountered that?
So there were kind of two layers. That the first one is our eighth slot. So we do the 3, the 5, the 7, and the 8th slot can technically be anyone. It can be a merc if we want to, which I don't think we've done since like 2012. But if there's somebody that we want, we have the capacity in the 8th slot to take them if we can make a case for them. So it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody. We only set the bar at 4 events, and we're not a big community. The rankings is only like 40 players. So if you've played
Mhm.
4 events, you're probably in the top 20. Unless you've done like utterly diabolically, which yeah. So there's kind of a couple of fallback cases there. It's never come up. We've definitely had like player number 14 is somebody who's been on the team before, had a bit of a year where they couldn't play a lot of events or didn't play a lot of events that were like singles events. They played a lot of team events that don't qualify for the rankings or whatever, and they still get selected. That's definitely been the case, especially if they're role players. Like the only person who plays Horde Orcs in the country. If Horde Orcs are something that we think we might want, you're probably going to come in, because if you're not playing Horde Orcs, you can play Bearers or whatever it was.
Or Razorwing Flocks.
Yeah, well, no, or you just take both, like whatever. And I mean, that year it was just Razor Wings and Storm Ravens anyway. There was nothing else. So
fun. No, there were Brimstones.
Yes, yeah. Did you play Brimstone Horde, Storm Raven Horde, or Razor Wing Horde?
Fun year. You missed that, Anthony. It was a truly wonderful year.
There were more Storm Ravens than players in the hall in Salamanca.
Yeah, that definitely predates my time. Every time I hear about like older 40K stuff, I'm like, man, I'm glad I started when I did, because every time it sounds like just pure unmitigated suffering. I'm just always like, oh,
Seventh was great. Seventh was great.
I like this guy. Seventh was great. I miss your ability.
Was it actually great, or was it great sometimes?
It was great if you were as good. If you were as good as you are, you would have loved Seventh.
Oh, okay. Was it one of those things where if you just played something strong, it was fine, but if you didn't, you wept?
It was like,
but there were one point there were so many strong armies that you were basically power creep everywhere.
Yeah.
And if everything is on like Votan level, then it's fine.
Yeah, if everything's on Votan level, but it's all defensive abilities, it doesn't matter.
Like,
yeah, because no one's ever dying, so you just win the game with geometry.
I think in seventh, one of our Space Marine players, like there was a live star that build with a captain on a bike with 2+ feel no pain. He actually had a mirror game where in total after the game they counted they lost 2 wounds.
I am all constantly chasing the high of 7th edition games where I didn't lose models. It's just not a thing that happens anymore. But if you played like Centurion, Death Star, or whatever, you could genuinely go games without losing a model, other than like a squad of scouts. And like I'm still chasing that.
Not doable.
No, not anymore.
Although Skark managed to do that at WTC.
Didn't he lose 2 drones?
Tyranids, he lost one drone due to
his own
Cyclic Ion Blasters overheating.
It's still a model dead.
What matchup was that? What did he play against?
Against 45 warriors from France. Turns out they can get tabled by turn 3.
Turns out
the only time I've ever seen a player get grenade in a WTC or ETC context was Home Nations 2018, which was right before Rule of 3. We had our Eldar player with, I want to say, 8 Crimson Hunters, played against all Hurricane Bolter Custodes jet bikes, and it was Alex Harrison against our player Ricky in Hammer Naval deployment, and he just let the custom bikes walk to the middle, flew directly over them, shot them. Custom bikes went backwards, flew directly back the way, shot them, didn't lose a model the entire game.
So dumb.
Yeah, this game has had its ups and downs.
That's a very polite way of putting
it. Yeah, I played 8 Hive Tyrants that weekend, and I played against 21 Dark Talons in 3 games. So
my favorite is watching people ask you why your Hive Tyrant is labeled number 3, and then you're like, oh no, don't worry about it.
It was 7.
Oh, that's what it was.
Actually,
it's 7 on your Tyrant space.
When it comes to fun games, I had a game at WTC that year. It was ETC actually by then in Salamanca, where I played my 200 Dreamstars against 400 Guardsmen. I wanted to hang myself.
Yeah, that's terrible. That sounds awful.
I watched 2 Razorwing Flock players play that year, and I had to walk over to them and be like, who went first? You win, because the other guy's going to time out before he could walk on objectives. And then they realized that they wounded each other on 4s, and they were so excited because they were strength 2. So Razorwing Flock context, Anthony, were 8 attacks, strength 2, full rerolls to hit and wound.
No. They had warrior skill 5 up, so weapon skill. So
weapon skill 5, strength 2, full rerolls to hit and wound. The Yunkarn teleporting about and giving them a 6 of Feel No Pain. They were
5
Why do they
plus
7.
call
in
it a
Vol.
wound?
They were 7 points a model.
Guide and Doom.
No, didn't the Beastmaster just gave them reroll wounds in a bubble as well?
Yeah, I think
So
he gave him.
stupid.
Yeah, it was fun.
And Brimstones were toughness 3 at the time, so toughness 3 with a 4
mess.
vulnerable save for 2 points.
Anyway, coming back from this tangent.
Back on
Oh no,
track.
dude, you need
Get out of
this
7th
is the
edition.
network, man. You gotta get used
Yeah.
to this.
Yeah, like I mean, if you're going to Coventry, I know Anthony,
I
you're
am.
coming, right?
I'm there.
Ines,
Yep.
you are as well, right? Oh
Yep.
boy, it will be fun. Anyway,
Hair of the dog, Anthony, bring some.
And
then how did you approach like choosing your armies every year? Because I know teams approach it differently. Like I know US wanted to prey on knights this year. Like it was pretty obvious that you guys wanted to do that. Some teams try to get what they see as top 8 armies in the meta, which I think was the case with Germany. We, for example, anticipated what would be the general meta and wanted to have 2 counters for every kind of army in the game that we expected to be present. And what is your guys' approach? Like, how did you guys do it? Because I can imagine you had to lash with people a lot.
Well, yeah. So we ended up not having Necrons this year, which was obviously not great. As some teams
Bold
might have
choice.
noticed. Yeah, it wasn't so much choice as we didn't own a Silent King among the like 15 people in the circular community. And we were like, I'm not buying a Silent King in 27 rates. You buy a Silent King in 27 rates. So we just couldn't get our hands on it. And we were like the only person that would have had the time and capacity to get that list up to WT skill level was me, and nobody was going to be able to get the NIDs as well. So it was just like, this is a bad situation all around. What we end up usually doing is we identify. So we start by like in October we split armies out, and we'll say, here are your 3 armies for the year. Here are your 3 armies for the year, and they'll be like, every army will go to all the major armies. So your Marines, your Tyranids, your Eldar will go to 2 players, and then all the small armies like Admex on 1 player and whatever. And then if it ends up that we need to shuffle it around later, we shuffle it around. And then we have like a couple who are just like, you are on whatever we need you to be. You're the team bitch this year, which usually ends up being me because. But thankfully, I was Tyranids, then Team Bitch was my order, so I got Tyranids.
Yeah.
Because Tyranids were fucking awful in October when we assigned armies. So we usually go with the approach of get the 6 or so armies we think are going to be the best. So 6 or so end up being, not Necrons this year was like the one army we missed from the top 6. And then we try to fill the gaps in with what's left. So we have, you get this year you have your Tyranids, you have your Sisters, you have your Blood Angels, so on and so forth down the line. And then we went, well, what's going to fill these gaps that we can put in? And then we tried to fill in with those. We ended up going with an Agrippina, the Agrippina Admech list, which was kind of the idea was that it can first defend into Tyranids, which actually ended up working a bunch. But I don't know if that was just the teams we were playing against. We kept putting it down first defender, and people would go, here's Tyranids, and then we go, you see that board that has no objectives you can hide on? Do you want to get shot by this army for 5 turns? And then we get like 8 to 10 points off of Tyranids, which ended up being pretty solid for us. So I actually was not unhappy with that choice. And then we had Dark Eldar as our second, which I was not happy with, but we didn't have a follow-up army. I would have happily traded either of those for Necrons or Tau. But that just didn't end up being the way it fell. Yeah, the Tau story is less fun. Our Tau player fully just said, I do not think this army is WTC viable. And I looked at him and I went, you're a very good Tau player. Sure. And then he went and played Sisters. And then about day 1 of the War Masters, he went to me and was like, should have played Tau. And I went, yeah, probably should have, but I wasn't going to tell you that because you had fully given up on them. So
he was.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that the people will learn after more than 1 year is that what works in singles and what works in teams aren't the same.
And you said like you have mostly one player focusing on one army, so you probably do not have few guys thinking about the same army and brainstorming, right?
So it was kind of like the armies that ended up being good this year ended up being ones that didn't have overlap. Because if you had said to me in like October that we'd have needed to have 2 people who were prepped on Necrons, 2 people who were prepped on Tyranids, and 2 people who were prepped on Tau, I would have said you're fucking insane, because those armies are almost always not. The 3 of them are almost never.
And
good
you
at the same
don't
time.
need Drukhari.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You don't need Jakar, you don't need Admech.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it just ends up being sometimes the way it falls when you take an approach like this is it backfires a little bit. It's obviously it's worked in previous years because I'm just continuing the same formula that was being used when my captain did this in 2018, 2017, 2018, and 2019. Not so much 2019. We don't talk about that year.
The dark years.
It's still an ongoing process. This was my first year captaining, so I'm still working out the little things on that one. I think when we see an army like Tyranids doing as well as it is, I need to probably just say somebody else needs to start playing this army at least a little bit so that I can bounce off it if the needs comes up. That's probably the mistake I made, was just assuming that I would play Tyranids and that it would be fine. Which, I did great. Personally, very successful tournament.
And you were doing pairings, correct?
Yeah.
What a coincidence, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Those
to be
are
fair,
not
our win,
related, I'm sure.
our win condition was just I win 20-0 and whatever the fuck else happens.
So
And that
clearly
worked
it worked.
almost 4 times.
Yeah. 7 draws and 120 now.
Yeah.
That's a fair approach.
So it ended up just being like, yes, it kind of ends up being that way, but whatever was going to happen with Tyranids, you kind of didn't have bad pairings this year unless it was Skark. Like your page metrics could have just said Skark 0, everything else 15-5, and you probably wouldn't have been
Not
far
Eric.
wrong if you played Tyranids this year.
Yeah. You got
Eric.
Cringe. The Eric MU is not good either.
Yeah, no, and I know that now. I wouldn't have at the time. I'd have wrote 15.
That's true.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't know it at the time.
A whole bunch of people
honestly,
fucked around.
I've played 10 games with that list now, and I'm still not sure I believe it. So
we'll see at LGT, right?
we sure will. So yeah, I would definitely, if we're seeing an army that's having meta dominance and relevance for as long as Tyranids did, I would probably make sure we have a backup player on that, which we will this year. The way team selection is going to line up, I'm going to have 4 Tyranid players this year. So that's a nice plus. Just in time for 10th edition.
So they will be probably nerfed to the ground.
Yeah, pretty much. But that's fine. I've already abandoned ship like the rat I am. So
he's out of there.
Yeah, it will just be a case of preparation this year will be make sure the armies that are not just the armies that are popular, because we expect that we'll need 2 Space Marine players, because we probably need a melee Marine player and a shooting Marine player. We probably need 2 Eldar players, because Eldar are almost always a relevant army, and one of their second armies might be good enough, so we need a second one. And then making sure that we readjust that to 4 home nations and be like, we probably need to double up on the broken armies right now. That probably needs to be something that just goes into our planning process now.
And you were saying that you basically had those 6 armies ready, and you were filling the gaps with like the remaining. How did you approach that? Did you do some mock pairings against some mock teams that you would actually?
Oh, I wish. Nobody on my team understands pairings well enough for me to do mock pairings into. It just kind of ends up with me being, I have got everything as a green matchup. So I kind of don't do that. I probably should try and get somebody better at that. Mock pairings are just, we've always done them, and I'm always sitting there and I'm like, I don't really understand the value of this. But I don't know if that's just because the previous captains I've worked with didn't explain it well enough. I probably need to work more on that, speak to some other captains about it. We've when we do TTS scrims and stuff like that, the mock pairings there is super helpful. We did a bunch of those during COVID when I was actually playing TTS, but actually, doing mock pairings not so much. But I kind of went through a spreadsheet and was like, we have these armies that play this, these armies that play that, these armies that play that. What do we need an army that can play? And then I went to my guys and I was like, okay, I need you to design a Drukhari army that can play into this and this. I need you to pick one of these 2 factions that can play into this and this, because those are where the gaps in the matrix are. And then I just put it into Tyranids. I wrote, just don't. As you do. And what ended up happening was we didn't have a good enough answer for Necrons because none of us appreciated what Necrons were good at. and we didn't have a good enough answer for Tau. What ended up happening, and then
I don't
our
think
Admech and
we
Drakari were
couldn't find two counters for Tau.
Yep.
For example, in Poland,
No.
we just couldn't.
But we didn't have
Yeah,
we didn't
it's
have the
hard to
option
get.
of we didn't have the option of two lists that can get a draw off them either. We ended up being like, here, have our Chaos Knights. They're going to summon Furies and take banners at you and score 5. That
That's a
worked.
wishful thinking.
It worked against the 15 Dresses settlers from Spain. Our Chaos Knights summoned 2 squads of Furies turn 1 and scored 7 on banners, which is more than he'd gotten on any other secondary.
All right.
Okay. Well, good for him, I guess.
Like, I don't know if it's a strategy, but it's what we went with, and it kind of almost it didn't work at all. We got absolutely.
I would love to
absolutely
hear
stomped
my
by Germany and
player
Spain, but-
actually like approach me. I know how to play this pairing. I just need to summon Furies, and I will smash this guy 5 points for me. I would love to hear that. Like,
Typhus
Look,
is
I'm not saying
particularly large
I'm not
fan,
saying
but
that he didn't approach me, Typhus. It's fine. I told him to summon Furies.
okay, well, does it make it better or worse for you in this game?
I don't know. I don't necessarily think I want to know. All I know is he was like our third high scorer that round.
Ouch.
Oh.
Yeah, we won. So our first 2 rounds were Germany and Spain. We won 3 games in 2 rounds.
That's a rough
Well,
couple of rounds to
Yeah,
start with.
rough start. Yeah, it was real bad for morale. I'm not gonna lie. That group draw was
yeah,
utterly horrific.
we were saying from like the very get go that you were in the group of death.
Yeah, we ended up beating Norway pretty convincingly, which we were happy with, which is a good way to end the group. I was glad that was game 3 because we were all fucking knackered by the end of it.
Yeah, and it can uplift your morale as well.
Yeah.
So,
and honestly, Germany and Spain were both lovely to play against. We didn't have a single issue with either of the teams. But yeah, you play 3 games of 4-hour rounds of 40k in a day, it is going to grate on you. So ending on Norway was really good for us. We went from Norway into. Oh, this is bad. I actually forget who we played. Was it Denmark?
they got one win in our group as well.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember off the top of my head what the order we played teams is. But yeah, so we ended up going 1 and 2 in the group stage. But yeah, so like I said, we got 3 wins combined in the first 2 rounds, which is a really bad way to start everybody off. So like, our sister's player is sitting there. He's just been hit on 2 11-inch charges by a Thousand Suns army to lose the game, and he's like, "I wish I was playing fucking Tau." And it's like, yeah, I get it, but don't let those 2 11-inch charges get to you, man. We still got 4 games to play. It's difficult to manage that in the moment.
Yeah, that's something that I, for one, regret during the event. That as I was forced to play, that I couldn't just be detached from the games in a sense and see our player losing and just grab him, go for a beer, and just talk with him about something completely else.
Yeah, for sure.
Completely
My
different.
coach was doing a lot of that for me, but not as much as I think I would have liked. We only had 1 coach this year, so our coach was very focused on pairings and making sure we've all got and stuff like that, and not so much on the emotional management side of things, which is definitely part of it, and it's part of why you wanted to do non-playing captain this year, right?
Yeah, I wanted to be non-playing captain specifically because I knew there will be a lot of new faces that I could handle a lot of stuff for them. And well, as Anthony clearly knows, I was very well non-playing captain. So anyway, you were speaking about choosing armies. As you obviously know, like 2 weeks before the list submission, we were dropped with a bomb, which was definitely on the CP changes. How much did it affect you? Because for us, it was a fucking nightmare.
Oh yeah, catastrophic, utterly horrible. I think 4 players changed armies, 3 players changed everything about their army. Within that, I went from playing no warriors to playing warrior spam. Our Hail of Doom list functionally completely changed. It should have been Harlequins anyway, but it completely changed. We ended up swapping from. Yeah, I
let's
know.
talk more about.
Don't.
At least Nick on that stream with Hobbies against Grain has shown how to not play Harleys. So if you guys ever want to learn how to not play Harleys, you can go to Art of War.
Tiffus is just
There you
down
go.
with burning all our bridges.
Dude, Tiffus just goes for the flame, dude. That's what we're here for. We do it too.
Yeah.
You're no better.
We ended up. No, absolutely not. So our Tyranids list changed conceptually. Our Elder list got a lot weaker, and our Elder list was our second or third strongest player. And he went from being a list that we used to shove his dick down people's throats to a list that we had to protect in pairings, which is not great. Yeah, I know, right? Like at Home Nations, he was our second bully list with Tyranids, and then at WTC he was protect him like a baby, which is not what I was prepped for. We lost. We ended up having we dropped Thousand Suns and moved Chaos Knights to that player. Added in something else. We cut Grey Knights because they just didn't work under the new format as we thought. And then he changed to Admech because Admech maybe got a little better, not enough. And then our Drakari player was on something else before that as well. And then we had to add in Sisters, and then obviously the Necron changes that we weren't prepped for. Didn't have a player ready to move on to it. It was awful. Just it undid all of the prep that we had done, and that's part of the problem with the new release schedule for us, with the way our team is built. I think it might be another thing that we have to readjust for, is that this system worked great when the game changed once every 4 years. Now that it's changing every 3 months, do we just need to change our timescales? And probably yes, to be honest. I don't know if having everything prepped and locked in 6 months in advance is useful if we have to deal with Nephilim changes beforehand, or if I just say
we
to
had
everybody,
everything
just get good.
prepped like mid-June, and then Nephilim dropped. So
Yeah, right into the
we had to
garbage.
scrap everything. Yeah.
Yeah, imagine being one of those poor Chaos Space Marine players who was playing Chaos Space Marines and then not only didn't get to use their codex, but also lost Death of the False Emperor against everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not
Yeah,
on the
you
F8,
got
it's not on the
nerfed.
data slate anymore.
I think we saw a lot of them at WTC, right? Like clearly an abundance of Chaos Space Marine players.
Yeah,
like,
just
exactly zero.
Yeah, they were all whinging about how they were playing Thousand Suns.
or mids.
Yeah.
Imagine complaining about playing Nids, man. That's just
It was gross.
We had a sentiment that we actually realized after this year's WTC that this was the first year for us that we had no Marines or no Chaos Space Marines in the team since
we
like
had Blood
2007.
Angels.
Yeah, but like it was just our like point of view. Like we realized that it's been a long time that those armies aren't at the top or like anywhere near the top.
I mean, that Chaos Space Marines. Did you really have Chaos Space Marines in previous years when it was like, yeah, so this is my cultist horde. This is definitely a Chaos Space Marine list.
I mean, you guys had there was almost no chaos at all at the WTC besides Chaos Knights. Like,
And there was Death Guard.
Thousands. There was a bunch of Thousands of Death Guard as well.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
There weren't many demons, and there weren't many Chaos Space Marines.
Yeah,
which is perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, they're old codexes. There weren't many guard either. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, that's an NPC faction. They're not real.
Yeah, but I would have said the same thing about Tyranids a year ago. So let's not make that joke too much.
But yeah, with the Nephilim change, we obviously had a lot of issues with it because we had to scrap a lot of stuff. But how did you actually approach it? Like, because I assume you had armies preset before Nephilim, basically at that point. You had armies lists preset for every player. Maybe not like polished. Maybe you were thinking about one army, like what would you specifically have in the list. But how would you approach that in the sense that would you, for example, do like a tier list and see whether
do you want how would I or how did we? Because those are different.
Both.
Okay, so how I would like to have approached it is that we functionally just reset everything and we said, what are the new 8 best armies? Let's assign those to players. I think I would have had a full-on riot on my hands if I told everybody they were changing factions, except me, who was still playing Tyranids. I think I might have been stabbed.
Well, you talked about that before, right? You just wouldn't have done that. You would have given someone else Nids and then just
I should have done that and gone and played
yeah.
Necrons or whatever. Yeah, which is probably
right.
I probably wouldn't have done that, to be honest. I think I would have found someone else in Necron army and just put the whip to them and just play Tyranids because I had the continuation there. And I think I needed to be our win condition this year, which is horrible to say, but I think that kind of ended up being the condition. What we ended up doing was I asked everybody if they needed to change their army, and then a bunch of them said yes, and a bunch of them said no, I'll be fine. And then a bunch of them were wrong, and a bunch of them were wrong in the other way as well. So a bunch of people who said they were fine weren't fine, and a bunch of people who said they needed to change didn't. Which was just kind of bad all round. So, like I said earlier, our town player dropped town, moved to sisters. We should have just left. We should have just had sisters and someone else. A brain dead monkey could have played that army for 12-8 every round of the WTC. 12-8 losses, of course, but 8 points every round would have been done better than most of our armies did. So
8 points.
And then
that was my role. That was my role at the event.
The other thing I needed people to do was play more, unfortunately. With the way things worked out, a lot of people on the team had they've prepared all of their leave, they've used it up, they've used all of their brownie points with the wife for WTC. They don't have, I got to play 30 games in Nephilim. A couple of my guys played 4, less maybe, because they didn't have 2 weekends off to practice it. They had, family commitment away for a week. So yeah, we just didn't get enough games.
And you didn't use TTS, correct?
No, some of them did, some of them didn't, and the ones that didn't, it was obvious that they weren't practicing. Which is just unfortunately what ended up happening was they were the players that underperformed, or they were some of the players that underperformed. Some of them did okay, like they did fine, but as a team we didn't do well enough because I knew they weren't practiced, so I gave them easy matchups, or I gave them good matchups and they got okay points but not great points. All of the various conditions where you can get less than you should. Like I put them into a matchup, they should get 15 and they get 12. And yeah, cool, you won the game. Or I give you a matchup that you should get a 10 in and they get a 6 from me. And it's like, cool, yeah, you got 6, we drew the round, we won the round. It's fine, we move on. But what I noticed this year was every matchup that we had that was a coin flip, we lost. And every matchup that we had that was like a 10-10, we got an 8. And every matchup we had that was a 15, we got a 12. Like almost across the line. It was just, we were weaker players. We were less prepared than our opponents.
And do you think not playing on TTS, playing on TTS would help? I think it would.
I don't think it's... Sorry, please.
I will forgive you, first of all. Second of all, what I was trying to say, I think TTS is a great thing if you have spread community. What we actually witnessed is I do not feel like playing a game on TTS myself, but I would watch Vladi play against someone else in my team, and everyone who was watching that game, and it would be the whole team at that point, we would basically create watch parties every evening, and everyone would learn. You wouldn't have just blog posts with people's conclusions. You would actually have your own conclusions after watching a game. So I think that's another thing that's really important because it's another approach to knowledge sharing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was a big part of it, was that to use the title, that our matrixing was awful this year as well, which is another wholly separate issue because people just didn't have matchup knowledge. Matchups that were easy pre-Nephilim were hard post-Nephilim because you couldn't just take to the last. You had to find a good secondary that wasn't Stranglehold, all these kind of things. And, people went into it and was like, yeah, no, I reckon I beat Necrons, and then they play Necrons for the first time in round 2 after they've predicted me a green matchup, and I think the joke I made after the event was if I had gotten a 5 in every single green matchup, we'd have won the tournament. Yeah, if all of our 15 predictions had brought home 5 points, I don't think we'd have lost the round. So we were going into matchups with our matrix predicting 80 to 100 points, and we'd come out with 60, and it's like, well, where is the issue here? And I'd look through it and I'd be like, so I swung up because I pushed like a motherfucker. Every single other matchup swung down here, or one has gone neutral, one has swung horribly badly, and every single other one has swung a little bit down. Or people's matrices were just wrong. So yeah, having that TTS knowledge share would have been massive for that. I think if I had been playing on TTS a little bit more, I could have played with some of my players that need a little more prep as well, which is always good when you're in a position where I'm playing as well as I have been over the last year, to play with more of my team. I did as much as I could physically, but what that ended up being was the 4 players that live within 40 minutes of me played me a shit ton, and the other 3 didn't play me at all, or played me once or twice, which isn't super helpful. It's definitely helpful for the 4 guys who got to play me a shitload, but the other guys didn't get a lot out of it, which TTS would have helped a lot with. And then obviously the other thing is the 8v8 scrims versus other teams would have been invaluable for catching lists that we missed, because we didn't get any of that. We kind of developed everything mostly in house with speaking to a little bit of other captains and watching tournament results, which is not where you really want to be when you're trying to design tournaments. We did a bunch of team events down south, but that ended up being the same 4 guys. It was, me and the guys that lived near me would go down for them, and the other guys wouldn't, and we would tell them what happened, but they wouldn't see what happened. So when they come to doing their matrices and trying to fill out that information, they weren't getting it right. And it would have been unfair to expect them to get it right, but I also expected them to do more practice.
Right.
Yeah. So it cleanly transitions into my another question. So how did you decide what games do your players need to get? So what do they need to play test before the event, and how did you prepare into pod phase? And why am I asking this? Like, I would, in the first days after the list release, I would do like 10, 12 mock pairings every day and realize what people would probably
what are people
get to
likely to
play.
be playing against. Yeah.
And then I would basically give a list to every player, like, you should play this. I need everyone to play this archetype, because there were so many Bloody Rose sisters and they were so fucking homogeneous that you played against one, you played against everyone. So yeah.
All right. Let's get into the not flame my team, but flame my team part.
Okay.
Right. This year is the least active I've ever seen my team be after list release for WTC. To the point where I hadn't seen. Normally, you get the WTC list, people dive into them. You read every single list. You point out, oh, look at this, look at Team X's list, look at Team Y's list. Oh, this is really cool. I really love this deck. I opened up 3 Discord channels in our Discord, and none of them. I don't think there was a message in any of them like 3 days after list release, other than like me being like, here is the lists. These are the ones we need to check. This is my checks on this list, and that was for the teams we were playing in the pod phase. It was frankly embarrassing how little my team seemed to give a shit about the list release this year. I know that they were talking about it. They were talking about it like to me in private messages, or they were talking to a couple of other people that they talked to a bunch, like in private messages to the people they practice with. But in our like broad strokes, like in our Discord server, in our Facebook, there was fuck all, and it was really really sad, honestly, because I want to be sitting there and I'm like, I want to talk about 40k 37 hours a day, 12 days a week. And I want to be sitting there and I want to see them. I want to see them doing that, but I also want them to do it organically, not with me pushing them. And there was absolutely none of that this year. And I couldn't get my guys to practice outside for like general terms. I could get them to practice, but practicing against something specific, I couldn't get them to do if I was like paying them money to do it. So we did a couple of practice days where we were like, okay, so we pulled up. We had 3 weekends in a row. We pulled up our game store. We whipped out and I pulled out. All right, everybody, you're playing Mission 13 today. I want you to play against German lists. So we had a couple of really good practice days where like I would whip out the German Tyrant list that we were playing in day one, and I'd be like, right, I want the 3 of you that are here. I want you to sit and I want you to deploy against it, and I want the other guys to talk to you about your deployment. And then I'm going to play my turn 1, and you're going to play your turn 1, and we'll do it both ways. And then the second guy's going to do it, and we're going to rotate through that for a couple hours. And like doing stuff like that was super helpful. And we got out like the Spanish Necrons list and ran through games against that. And and we did that for a bunch of lists. We didn't do it for every list because like you said, you don't need to do it for every Bloody Rose Sister list. You don't need to do it for the standard Bloody Angels list. But getting out the weird lists and getting practice into them was super helpful for us. And those were really good. And the guys that were doing that, the guys that were at those practice days, did a lot better in rounds 1, 2, and 3. We didn't. I'm not going to be honest. We didn't practice for Norway over much because we a little bit mentally wrote that round off as like we will probably win this if we think we're good, and we did. But it was closer than I would have liked. So maybe we weren't as good as we thought we were. That would not be surprising. I don't know if anybody's shocked at that. So yeah, we did a lot of practice for round 1 and round 2. We basically didn't look at lists outside of pods because we didn't know how good we were going to do outside of pods. It's not like we're England, Poland, Germany, where we can be like, we're probably going to play the other teams that we expect to win the tournament. We could have literally been playing fucking anyone because we could have gone like, if we had done well and beaten Spain, lost to Germany, beaten Norway, we pop out in the 2-1s. We play
It's a mess.
any number of teams, or we
Yeah.
pop out in 1 and 2 and we play any number of teams. So like, yeah. But we
Fair.
didn't do matrices for every team we played against. Not gonna lie, I didn't either, but that's because I did my matrices for we split the teams into 3. I did my matrices for all the teams that I classed as green teams, which was the teams in our pod, and the other teams that I thought were like the best teams at the event. That I was like, we need a matrix and I need to prep into these. And then I did that, and then 3 days after the deadline for that, I was chasing people for it, and I was like, I'm not that fucked anymore. And I kind of just stopped chasing people for it because they weren't doing it organically. And I just didn't want to push them for that because if they're not doing it seriously, I don't need them to do their matrix. But what that ended up being was we ended up doing matrices during lunch from scratch. Like for round 7 against Austria, we did our matrix during round 7 against Austria. I'm like, come over and tell me what your matrix is so I can pair it. It was a shit show. It really was, and I'm disappointed in that because that reflects on me as a captain. I don't think I organized the team well enough this year. I don't think I engendered that community where we wanted to talk about that stuff, and I don't know if that was something I did wrong or just something that the culture didn't support. Because in previous years we had guys who've been doing this for 10 years and they all know what the process is. This year it was new guys, and I don't know, we just didn't click right.
But you didn't have an issue with that, for example, for home nations, right? Was it like purely for WTC, or was it like?
It was a little bit for home nations, like getting people to fill out matrices is always a fucking chore. I'm sure you're fully aware of that.
We had 20 filled by first week after.
I'm talking to Anthony.
List release. Yeah. Well,
I was like, God damn, son. Yeah, our matrix was a shit show that made me infuriated every time I looked at it, and I constantly had to go in and be like, hey, so that's not even vaguely close to real. Specifically for
you had, for example, Craftwords as green against Harleys, right?
That wasn't green.
Typhus, has he told you the insanity of the American pairings matrix where they predict an exact score?
I don't want to talk about it.
Like they have to go in and predict 17-3 or 18-2, man. Like they gotta go precise.
Yeah, that's something that we've done like in 2010.
When the game was out of 20 points and you could predict it exactly on turn 1 based on the mission you were playing.
And you had points for killing models, and you scored 20 in your system based on how many points in models you killed.
Yeah. It's like, I'm going to table you. Cool, thank you. No,
as a surprise to no one, that didn't work well. We just had a lot of like meta reads that were wrong because there was you talk about doing things in house. Like we literally did it like our stuff came out of a house, like one of them. So there was not necessarily a lot of thought bubble penetration that happened. So there was a lot of like learning on the fly at the event that happened. And that was
not great because you don't get a lot of time to adapt between rounds when you're trying to eat lunch and also recover the guy who's crying in the corner.
But I think that actually applied to everyone I spoke to.
Yeah, sure. Most teams that was the
because
case.
You have your own preconceptions that you've boiled for months at this point,
right?
And they get broken so easily with just one matchup or one of your coaches watching a matchup from another team. Like it was in our case, we had a lot of spying going on,
right?
And we were quite surprised that some matchups actually went completely different than we anticipated.
Yeah, our biggest issue is that our pod just reaffirmed a lot of what the incorrect stances were because we won by like really large margins in a lot of our pod games. So people were like, dude, easy, we got this, we were right, no problem. And then we played like England, like again, it was fine. Then we played the Aussies and it was not. Then we played you guys and it was not. And the Germans didn't go great either. And that was kind of the experience of the US team.
You sailed the highest highs and the lowest lows. Every year, America is almost always like. Do you remember, like every single year, you look at the WG stands at the end of day one, and America's at the top because they played 2 nobody teams. It's almost every year America's top after day one,
It's
and
the
then they
nature of
play
our
like
singles events, baby. We crush them randoms.
and then almost every year you look at them after day 2 and they're 2-2.
Yep.
At least they are consistent, right?
That's right.
They did win that one year. Like, I can't slide them off too much.
Yeah. Well, come
They
on,
won
we
with-
can.
They brought 3 Tesseract vaults and won. I'm proud of that. Like, well done.
Heroes, true heroes, those people that year.
Yeah, congratulations to Warner for flying with those, buddy.
Yeah.
I actually think if you can open them, you can fit a lot of your clothes inside. So, like,
You use the Tesseract vault as the luggage.
yes,
pad.
exactly.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
a lot of pants, socks getting there.
Yeah, that makes
Like,
sense. That makes sense.
Just wrap them around the katan.
Yeah, there you go.
It's the Skyfall socks, mate. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
it's very advanced Tetris, basically.
Antimatter Thunderwear.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I don't think I have any questions actually anymore. I've run through all
made
of
it
mine.
through? Cool.
You have something, Anthony?
Yeah, just so like we know how you feel now. We know how you felt then. Like, what are like some of the things that you're looking forward to for next year?
Oh, mate, we're gonna fuck everybody up next year. I cannot wait. I have got like 5 players now who have gone through the gauntlet for a year at their first time and are like, all right, I know what the fuck I got to do this year. Like, Brian is so fucking ready for this year already. He's like not even like remotely part of the team yet, and he's like, yeah, so we need to develop this player and this player. This player needs to do this. This player needs to go to these events. You need to take this guy to Battle of Britain. This guy needs to get into team events. This guy needs to go to practice days. And I'm like, you could have organized as much of that as you want, buddy. Chris came on board for the vice captaining after his first year. Matty is just getting better. I've got a couple of guys like Simon and that who are now. Simon got picked to coach one year and then ended up. So part of the 2019 story that I'll briefly tell, we had a player drop on the Thursday before the event started on the Friday. I know. So we pulled our coach in and was like, here's our Mortarian army. Good luck. We shouldn't have had a Mortarian army for starters, but also you've never played this before. Go have fun. He didn't. So he got his first chance playing this year. He was unfortunately the one that got his Hail of Doom army pulled the rug out of him. So he didn't have quite the year he was hoping, and I think he's probably plays the most of any of us. So I think he's now in the situation where he's like, I'm like next year. I think he's going to be sorted. I hopefully don't get any worse. I'm ready for next year, and we've got like 4 players who have come out of the woodwork this year that are looking to get involved. That can maybe pick up some of those slots if anybody who's on the team this year isn't feeling it or doesn't make the cut. I am looking forward to it.
Fuck yeah, man.
We can do it. We've done it once. We can do it again.
That's right. Hell yeah. Anything that you want to?
That's the attitude you should have.
Yeah, 100%. You got to go in with confidence, right? Or you're not going to go in at all.
Plus, we're playing 10th edition. Who the fuck knows what's going to happen?
Who the fuck knows? Not me, that's for sure. What was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. Yeah. So is there, I mean, obviously you're on this fucking network, so there's probably not a whole lot you want to plug to the network.
I can do the outro for you if you want, but I think you should have to do it.
Anything you want to say on the way out, champ?
Fuck it. Everybody who was on Team Scotland this year, I know I've just spent an hour being a bit down on you guys. You guys performed like fucking troopers, and I'm so proud of all of you guys for coming out and giving it your best, even if it wasn't what we were looking for. Sorry if you feel like I've called you out on this one. Drop me a message. We can talk about it. Thank you to our coach who drank a liter of vodka on the Tuesday before the event.
I know.
Passed out.
I know.
I still can't believe you did that.
He literally approached me on Thursday. He approached me like, "Oh, Typhus, it's so nice to see you." Then 30 minutes later, he comes back as surprised as first time. Like, "Oh, Typhus, it's so nice to see you." Like, he literally forgot within 30 minutes.
And then 30 minutes later, he was passed out at a table. Boy drank like a Russian to make up for them not being there.
Do his best.
I cannot wait for next year. If you have not been to a WT, and then for everybody else who's listening, if you've not been to a WTC before, try and get involved with your local community. It is the best experience you'll have for 40K. This was the best event I did this year, despite the fact that it was the worst I've done at an event this year by a significant margin. I don't care. It was worth it, and I'll be back next year.
Like the
Nobody can fucking stop that.
community and like brotherhood you feel there is outstanding. It's something
it's like
else.
nothing I've
And I
done in 40K.
I refuse to let Chris Haynes do better than me ever again.
There you go. That'll show him. Fight the Canadians. Alrighty, guys. Thank you for listening. This was a bit of stat check bonus content. Obviously, if you like us, check it out. Check us out on Patreon. Check us out at the website. There will be links in the description. I'm not going to do them and butcher them. Thanks for listening again. Have a great night.